Yeah, so I've been in men's work for probably 5 or 6 years. I always had, a wanting to gather with men and this desire to gather with men and sit in circles, sit in tribe, like a men's council. And I started doing it about, say, 10 years ago. Call up the boys and be like, hey guys, let's all meet up
Hmm.
and hang and sit in circle and fuck it, let's create like a specific time frame. But I didn't really know too much about the structure. So eventually I met one of my closest brothers and one of my closest mentors as well. And he was like, hey brother, no, there's like structure behind this work. There's time frame. The masculine is the container. The masculine is super strong, super thoughted, super specific, and it's clear and it's like spear. You show up, and then once the container is set, you are able to open up and really dip into your feminine and be able to share your vulnerability with other men. This is the idea. And being
Yeah.
held in your resistance, in your pain, in your torture, because you can be held by men and you should be held by men because that is where your work is. So when you're showing up into your relationships, you're showing up clear, clean, and having the tools in order to work through your things and not project them onto other people. Right? So this is the idea. This is where the men's work comes in. It's a safe space in which a man can be held by other men.
Gotcha. And
So yeah, go for it.
uh, I'm I want to understand a little bit better. So what what would change in the dynamics of the circle if a couple females came in? Like what do you see as the advantage of men? Is it create a safer space to do you think that the presence of feminine energy makes it more difficult for men to kind of tap into their feminine side naturally, or just, how do you see those dynamics?
For sure. So a big misconception is men actually need to feel just as safe as women do. So it's a safety thing, right? Men are hyper fearful of vulnerability because they are seen as weak. And when you're seen as weak, you're discarded, right? Like this old school tribe mentality. If you're outside of the tribe, and you're a lone wolf, you have a limited amount of time for survival, right? But when you're with your pack, you can survive, right?
Mhm.
So when you're in a men's group, other men can relate to what you're going through. So the relatability factor, when you can relate with someone, generally speaking, you're allowed to open up. You can now surrender. You can be like, oh my God, this dude has gone through what I've been through. He can hold me because he knows what's up. He understands the pain and the pressure of being a man. He understands what it means to be a father. He understands what it means to, go through this constant space of guilt, not being able to show up. What's your worth? Not being able to express vulnerability out of fear of rejection. So when women come into that, a man might not feel as safe. A man might feel like he's trying to impress. So he's not going to really
Mhm.
show up fully. He's not going to really surrender fully. He's not going to really be telling the truth. You know what I mean? Because he
Yeah.
wants to impress, he wants to show. So there's that space. But on the other hand, what I've also liked to do is bring men's work and women's work together. So men's group and women's group, and basically have, maybe the women sit behind the men in a circle, and the men will actually also lead in that capacity of like, okay, it's men's turn. Men's are going to show up. There's going to be a nice container of like how what a man is sharing. So we normally do a couple minutes share per person in a standard container, and then maybe women can go, oh wow, I've never seen this before. Men opening in the space in such vulnerability, and we can hold the container for them in that space as well. And if women could also do the same and switch positions, then men can now see women's point of view. So the biggest thing that happens is that with women need to feel safe. Woman has this natural need for safety, natural need for to be desired, to be taken. There's these steps in womanhood and these steps in manhood. Men need to be seen, they need to be held in that container as well. So I've always been in a space of we can mix the two and actually have incredible conversation around that because we can see each other and each other's point of view.
Yeah, that's really cool. And so you run the men's group. Do you also run a separate women's group, or do you have partners, friends that have groups for women? Like where do you yeah, how does that all come together?
So yeah, so I have other sisters who have women's groups and run their circles and run their moon circles as well. Obviously, I'm much more familiar with the men's because I have two different circles that I sit in now, and those two circles is also just for me to sit. I don't like to facilitate a lot of the circles that I'm in based on me. Also, this is my work, this is my healing.
Hmm.
If I'm facilitating things all the time, then I'm not in a space of actually just fully surrender.
Yeah.
So that's important as well that when, as a man, say you want to start and facilitate men's work, you have to make sure that you have your own circle where you're not leading, you're not facilitating, you're showing up just fully as yourself.
Hmm. Yeah, that makes. I'm a personal trainer. That's what I do for work. But I teach classes all day, and then in the evening I go and I'm a student in another trainer's class. Same idea, but different realm. But yeah, I think it's really important to study what you're teaching, as you can't just only teach. Um,
Absolutely.
and so, just in your reflection over the last several years when you've been running these men's groups, I guess what have you found? Like, did you expect to, first of all, did you expect to go down this path? Did you kind of arrive in Costa Rica, and when did it, when did it come on your horizon? Like, men's group is something that's meaningful to me. This is where I can really help a lot of people. And since you kind of shifted into this, what have you kind of learned, I guess?
So it's probably like, I used to work primarily with women
Okay.
because, I found that women felt very safe with me. They had this space of, okay, cool, Kyle can tap into his feminine energy very well, so I can feel safe in his feminine energy, and therefore I can open up and surrender into that. So I saw this as a beautiful opportunity and a gift to really help women go through trauma, go through a point where they have now, kids have gone to school, and now they're in a space where they're like, who am I? Where am I? And all of these traumas and insecurities and pains come up and arise. And so I created a beautiful retreat group and a retreats company with a friend of mine in which we would serve these women and basically helping them go through their healing process and integration very quickly. So that was my first kind of step into a lot of this natural healing because I used to do personal training too. I've always kind of been in the health and wellness,
Hmm.
done integrative nutrition, juice detoxing, all of that. And that led me into kind of life coaching. And that led me into kind of women's work and working with women primarily. And then, so a lot of this I did my own work, and then it naturally led to, oh, I'm now working with women because
Hmm.
I'm more in touch with my feminine energy, my ability to communicate and express and be vulnerable. So that was where that trigger was. Then I started to kind of go, okay, cool, where's my masculinity at? How strong am I? What's my container look like? Can I hold the space that I need to hold? What does my spear look like? Is it sharpened? How do I show up as a man? And so that's the work I started doing, stepping into more ceremony, stepping into more of my own guidance. You know, can a man light a fire? Can a man really push himself to be a provider? And it's not just financial. You need to be an actual energetical provider as a man, and a man who can hold space for his community and his family, right? Can you hold that? What does that look like? So then I started going through that process myself, and I started, oh wow, I can actually, start to teach this. I can teach this to other people, other men, and I started getting into that and started really holding more circles and coaching more men, and also just entrepreneurs who were basically gone through burnouts and were like, well, fuck, I have no idea where I'm at. I've lost all my relationships. I have no idea what it means to be a man. I have no tools to be vulnerable or, feel comfortable in my insecurities. How do I express this and communicate that to my partners? I also have desires. What if I have a desire to bring in another partnership or bring in another person into my relationship? What does these desires and communication look like? So there's a lot of like hidden things that started coming up and that I would personally go through, kind of learn to, in a way master, and then I'm in a space to now teach.
Interesting. And you kind of referenced it already, but how long did this all take? Like, from the time when you started doing first the women's coaching and until now, how long has this been developing? How long you've been learning and teaching?
Brother, probably eight years to
8
ten
years.
years. Yeah.
Interesting. And so, kind of what I'm hearing, and I'm kind of trying to connect some different dots we're talking about. Correct me if I go off track here, but it sounds like so you grow up in South Africa. You're you find yourself kind of stuck in the structures of the school, the just the normal family systems. You're put into these boxes that you don't necessarily feel comfortable in. Then you have a friend who tells you you should try Costa Rica or try somewhere different, explore a little bit more. You go out, and for the first time in your life, you're separated from these institutions, these structures, and you start to understand that as a man, as a human, the structures were keeping you away from the most pure form of expressing yourself, of understanding the world around you, and and so then you kind of devote your life, not intentionally at first. You sort of fall into exploring these structures, exploring these systems, exploring how to operate best with them or without them, and now you're teaching that. Is that a fair assumption, a fair assessment, or is that am I missing some details there?
I think it's a fair assessment. Yeah.
Nice. Um, okay, and then I want to talk about business a little bit since obviously you're in Costa Rica, you're running a business, you have online clients, in-person clients, as far as I know. Um, but just tell me a little bit about that. How do you run yourself as a business? Do you mostly rely on your in-person interactions and then find ways to monetize that? Find the send the emails you have to send to get the money, make the bank transfers, or do you really try to promote yourself as a business?